So the biggest issues in Ukraine are prostitution, sex trafficking, surrogacy, poor salaries and poor variety of employment for women, reproductive labor, and the concept of family and domestic violence. And the thing is that poor salaries and poor variety of employment for women leads us to a prostitution, which leads us to a sex trafficking. Poor salaries and variety of employment for women and the concept of family leads us to a surrogacy, which is legal here, and leads us to a reproductive exploitation and sex trafficking as well, due to the kids buyers often trafficking kids and sexually exploiting them. Due to the poor salaries and variety of employment for women and the concept of family, women force themselves into marriage and family to have something to live for and often end up being the victims of domestic violence. It is a circle that never ends. The other part of the circle is corruption in Ukraine and a major governmental mess. With prostitution, the major problem is that even though it's banned, here's no one controlling it because the majority of all our laws are only de jure. It's only on paper. With surrogacy being legal, it's impossible to win in the court for surrogate mother over the kids buyers. And even if we had the law that protects the mother, those buyers can always buy themselves a win. The mother cannot do that due to surrogate mothers being often poor. Even having the money off of surrogacy, they spend it to improve their health due to often pregnancies and to feed their kids. Government does nothing here. Surrogacy for them is still a holy deed, charity work, helping poor people who cannot have children. Prostitution is the case that they do not discuss almost at all because women, in their minds, women are guilty and they knew where they were going to. Of course, sometimes they're willing to talk about this when we name it as sexual exploitation, sexual slavery, and we bring up kids to this case. The situation with domestic violence is better now with Istanbul Convention discussion, but in the media environment only. Police is highly corrupted. Society still blames women on being victims of domestic abuse. And if you're not willing to make your case really vocal, it's very unlikely, that's very likely you won't make any justice. Because of the corruption and major police violence towards women. And in the summer, there were many cases of police violence towards women blew up, and we even had a protest against these cases, and it just ended up being nothing changed. The minister still sitting there, all those people who are responsible for this violence, they are all sitting at the previous places where they were sitting at.
So for sure, the number one and the most tragic one is the domestic abuse. And the statistics, basically, if we have 10 domestic violence victims, 8 of them are women. And if we have 10 abusers, 9 of them are men. So this is the statistics, recent statistics from our country. So as you can see, the numbers are just incredibly high. I mean, it's definitely sex-based abuse. And as I said in the beginning, this Istanbul Convention is not ratified here in Lithuania. We have a law, some kind of a law against the domestic abuse. I think a few years ago it was initiated that the domestic abuse reports would be calculated differently. So after that, there was a huge race of cases in Lithuania. And basically, this law that is implemented in our society, it's very poorly it does not protect the women, of course, and the abusers, they will be removed from the house only for a few days, and then they will come back to the same house. And anyway, the police is also not very educated in this issue. Now it's definitely better than 10 years ago, but still it's not enough because the abuse is not going away. And we have just a few centers that can help these women to actually remove themselves from this state of that they are living in. I mean, in unstable houses. And so also recently they initiated a law that if the problem in Lithuania is that we usually as a society think of the abuse as a conflict between man and a woman. So that's a very, very bad thing to think in this way, that abuse is a conflict. And in law, we have this mediation thing where family conflict is being mediated by the third party, and basically women are pushed to face their abusers, and this is just outrageous, and this is happening in Lithuania. And so basically this is the main issue, I believe so. And of course there is a domestic labor issue, because women are still doing the domestic labor. Like 2 of the 3 labor that is being done at home is for the women, and same with the child care, and the pay gap also is still here. So I believe this is the main issues here in Lithuania.
The biggest issue right now, I think, is the lack of social services and social security in general for women, not only for women, of course, but as we are the one who take care of everyone, we get affected the most. So it's like this issue cuts across all kinds of services. When you have a child, the child support will be the maternity leave will be very low, like for example 270 euros, I think is the normal monthly allowance you would get when you have a child, which is nothing. Then if you have an elderly relative or a parent, you will not find any home for the parent, so you will have to take care of themselves alone. Also, unemployment benefits are like there are unemployment benefits, but when you're a freelancer, which many of us are, for example I am, you don't get any benefits when you don't have work. I also, for example, I have been active, like I have had a career for 10 years, and during those 10 years I have never paid my social insurance. So that's, if I ever get a pension, it will be the most minimal one there is. So that's also the problem, like low pensions, you won't get your child in a good school, and then you will have to pay for having private school, blah, blah, blah. And of course, this makes women very vulnerable to all kinds of abuse, also in the workplace, etc. And what did I want to say? Oh, I know many women who are just financially dependent on their husbands, and they're like, these women are really lucky because their husbands are not total fucking idiots. But what about all those other women? There are not, like, I know about like 3 shelters for women who are victims of domestic violence in all the country, and that's absolutely nothing. Also, you won't get any financial benefits if you have to run from the violent husband or anything.
I would say the domestic violence is definitely the biggest issue. First of all, because our institutions are extremely corrupted. Starting from the police, we have one of the slowest and most corrupted judiciary system in the whole Europe. There is lack of services for women who have experienced domestic violence. This was previously held by women NGOs, but now, because of this whole reforms that we had, are now state held, which means less funds and which means, of course, very poor service. there is no hotline with people who are educated to speak with women and to advise them on how to escape the situation. There is no enough safe houses. The femicides are extremely often, and the femicides are happening after millions of cases of reporting the perpetrator without any reaction of police. The very bad economic situation also kind of forces women to stay with the perpetrators because they are economically codependent, and of course there is like it was mentioned, unpaid work at home. This is solely a women's job. And, the gender roles are so strong in the society that it's out of the question that men actually can do something around the house or take care of the children or take care of the elderly in the family. So but now that we are speaking about safe houses, this is something that also can be an issue when we are talking about transgenderism, because if we allow gender identity, that means that people who identify as men will be able to enter safe houses. And now we have this outrageous draft of a new civil law where surrogacy is allowed for the first time in Serbia. And it's basically done in the same way as in Ukraine. And this is another exploitation of poor women. And I'm afraid that the situation is going to be exactly the same like in Ukraine. And I think it's been done for exactly those reasons, for rich people to be able to exploit poor women and have their own genes reproduced. So, yes.
I would say that the pro-family policies in Hungary, as I said, mainly benefit middle-class families. It really means that poor women are much worse off. For example, single women, older women who are often single, they get minimal support, whereas families with 3 children or more get tax cuts that are really quite substantial. For example, the family benefits that are not tied to employment have lost their value, so they have not been raised since 2008. And this means that if somebody cannot have proper employment with social benefits and so on, will not qualify for a higher maternity or parental benefit, unfortunately. And it is very, very low, 28,000 forints per month. So it is rather visible that the social policies of the government are tied or infused with racism, actually, because women of ethnic background, for example, do not only face discrimination, but by the government as well. They have to kind of make do and survive in such conditions that are really third world level. So they are often forced into prostitution. This is quite accepted, I think, by the government itself. So coming to violence against women, it's a huge problem in Hungary because the courts and the authorities are victim blaming or blaming the victims often. The new legislation that has been introduced because of a public outrage about an issue, about a case last year introduced by our Minister of Justice, is bind to the sex of the offender and the victim. So they really try to be as far from the Istanbul Convention as possible, because it is not based on the victim's safety. It is a very big problem that in child custody and visitation cases, the courts and other authorities do not take into account the previous violence against children or intimate partner violence, and there is a mandatory mediation in such cases. And when it comes to sexual and reproductive rights, Hungarian women do not or have not faced such harsh abortion bans. So for quite a while, there has been a societal consensus on that. But just a few days ago, our Prime Minister has signed a new declaration together with the US and a lot of Muslim countries, basically, where women's rights are not respected, which says that in terms of abortion rights, Hungary and the other countries will stay autonomous and will not sign international agreements that would be permissive about abortion. So we don't know what this means, but there hasn't been any societal consensus on signing this declaration.
In Poland, women are like 53% of the population. We are 53% of the society, and what we are experiencing is like governmental and system oppression on each level. So let's start with the domestic violence. This is a huge problem in Poland, and there is no option to separate the victim from the oppressor. They are not doing that. So you're calling the police is coming in, and they are saying, oh, well, fine, now you have to stay with this person like all the time because there's no support. What is more, like a few years ago, they just changed the law. So if you will report it for the very first time that you've been a victim of the domestic violence, the police will come in and will say, all right, we'll just keep it in records, and when will it happen again? We'll do something with this. And this is like, try to imagine that someone will steal your wallet and you're going to the police and saying like, listen guys, they stole my wallet. And police is telling you, if it will happen again, we will do something with that. And that is, that is outrageous for everyone. Like, why? But when it comes to the domestic violence, everyone are saying like, yeah, well, this is happening. So this is the climate in Poland. This is how the domestic violence issues look like. Now the Istanbul Convention, it was signed in like 6 years ago, but under the pressure. It wasn't like the previous government, like the liberal government wanted to sign it. No, they have exactly the same objections, and we still remember that they had the same kind of objections. But what is coming next? What is coming now? The present government is now trying to cancel this agreement. They are saying out loud that they want to dismiss the Istanbul Convention in Poland, because this is against the, in their terms and kind of understanding, this is against the traditional Polish family pattern. So that was about the Istanbul Convention. The next thing we are handling here in Poland is the consciousness closure. I do not know if you even know what it is. This is the special kind of agreement. This is a special kind of closure which is signed by the doctors and in pharmacies, like workers of the pharmacies. And what they can do, they can refuse you to provide you with the hormonal anticonceptional medicines, because this is against their consciousness. So try to imagine that you're going to the doctor asking for the pills, and they are saying, no, this is against my consciousness. I will not do that. So what we have right now is the region. There is a region in Poland that even if the abortion was legal, and I would like to remind you that 2 days ago, the Constitutional Tribunal in Poland said that abortion in Poland is against the constitution. So even if you would be able to terminate the pregnancy, they could say no, because this is against our conscience. And we are speaking about the doctors. So yeah, that's the problem. The next thing probably is getting retired. In Poland, women are supposed to work like 5 days, 5 years shorter than men. They are now trying to fix it out because they figured out as well that it makes the women's payment, like retirement payment, lower, and this is against equality, and something should be done regarding that. But still, they are not concerning the maternity leave as the period which should be equally paid. Women in Poland are getting 80% of the salary while taking maternity leave, which makes their retirement payment lower, like, from the very beginning. The next thing is obviously the payments. In Poland, still, women are earning like approximately 1/3 lower than men, despite having the same qualifications and the same responsibilities. And the payment gap is getting smaller, but still it's like 1/3 of the salary.